Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, and I do want to get right back into the headlines here on this Saturday, March 8th, as President Trump has signed an executive order establishing a government reserve of Bitcoin. Under Trump's new order, the U.S. government will retain the estimated 200,000 Bitcoin that it's already seized in criminal and civil proceedings. That is according to Trump's crypto czar, David Sachs. The executive order calls for a quote-unquote full accounting of the government's Bitcoin holdings, which Sachs says has never been fully audited. He added that the U.S. government previously sold off about 195,000 Bitcoin over just the last decade for $366 million. He did say those Bitcoins would be worth about $17 billion if the government had not sold them. I do want to bring in Alan Orwick, the co-founder of Quai Network, a blockchain infrastructure company. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
And thank you for having me, Josh. Excited to talk about Bitcoin today.
Yeah, and I did want to ask you, because I know it's a very basic question overall, but I want to start from the beginning here. Can you explain exactly what Bitcoin is?
Yeah, great question and not a simple one. I think many people are discovering Bitcoin. Bitcoin itself is the first decentralized digital currency, and it enables peer-to-peer transactions without a bank. The original vision of Bitcoin was to essentially enable decentralized networks and blockchain technology to transfer value. Bitcoin itself is secured by a process of proof of work. This uses global computers and a process called mining to ensure that the ledger that facilitates transactions is secure and immutable. Today, Bitcoin has a predictable emission curve and has ossified into a store of value, commonly referred to as digital gold.
Yeah, a good breakdown there. So we definitely appreciate it, because you hear Bitcoin so much, but not everyone fully understands exactly what it is. Are more people using Bitcoin now than we saw in the past? Is it just continuing to increase in popularity?
Yeah, I believe so. I think right now we're seeing Bitcoin grow at the faster rate than the internet itself. And this is being leveraged by digital infrastructure and technology that's growing quickly. We're privileged in the United States to have a robust financial infrastructure and a strong dollar. This means we don't necessarily need to rely on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, but we do want to ensure that the US remains on the forefront of decentralized technology and with Bitcoin. So I think it's important that we look at the future growth of Bitcoin here in the United States.
Let's talk about the pros and cons. Everything kind of has a pro and a con. So what are some of those when you talk about Bitcoin in general?
Yeah, so the way I see it, some of the pros of Bitcoin are that it's based on proof of work mining. This ties the production of Bitcoin mining to energy. And the fact that we can use this production of energy and have that used as an economic force and rely on that rather than weapons and wars to ensure that we have prosperity in the future. Furthermore, Bitcoin is decentralized, so there's no centralized entity that can influence or control the network. Again, relying on that peer-to-peer facilitation of value on this digital ledger. With this, it acts as an inflation hedge, so keeping governments in check and ensuring that we don't overinflate the dollar that we use every day. Some of the cons of Bitcoin are that it's actually slow and hard to use for payments. Again, relying on that fact that it's more of a digital gold and store of value nowadays. So I see this being a place of innovation where we can improve on expanding Bitcoin technology because it's essentially 1,000 times slower than Visa and MasterCard. Furthermore, Bitcoin's not private. Many people think it is. And so if we actually want to use Bitcoin for day-to-day transactions, there needs to be some added level of privacy there.
What is preventing Bitcoin from becoming, quote unquote, mainstream?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Bitcoin is already mainstream. It's a $1.8 trillion asset and it's being adopted globally. Again, looking at the fact that this is a global technology and something that the US is really just waking up to and becoming an innovator in with things like the strategic Bitcoin reserve and the digital asset stockpile. So I see other things that will continue to improve mainstream adoption in the US being the regulation that is coming down the pipeline. We have regulatory bills around stablecoin infrastructure and added development around Bitcoin and cryptocurrency technology. So I see all of that benefiting Bitcoin becoming usable for everyday Americans more and more.
What do you think overall, when you hear about Trump's executive order for a government Bitcoin reserve, how might that actually impact Bitcoin in general?
Yeah, so the way I see it, many people in the industry, myself included, were waiting on the edge of their seats for this. This was something that was anticipated and promised back in Bitcoin Nashville last July. So I see this as promises made, promises kept, and will enable further regulation and improvements in facilitation around blockchain technology. Maybe one of the things that we can get to is actually having the government run on blockchain in ways that which everyday Americans can audit the transactions and payments that occur within the government. So I think there's a lot of area and scope for innovation here. And all of that is being led with this current administration.
And before I let you go here, one misconception maybe that people have about Bitcoin, maybe several misconceptions. What are they?
Yeah, so I think many people think Bitcoin is a scam and a fad or a speculative asset. I think given the fact that Bitcoin is over a decade old now, we've seen it survive many boom and bust cycles and has remained. So I think the fact that the crypto industry now has further clarity and a team that is pushing forward innovation will enable more and more use cases to ensure that it's easier to use for everyday Americans, not just Bitcoin, but the cryptocurrency industry as a whole. And I also touched on earlier, many people think that Bitcoin is a currency that is used for nefarious actions and many different types of sort of circumventing of illicit activities. But in reality, Bitcoin is one of the most public and transparent cryptocurrencies on the market. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes up in the future.
Quai Network's Alan Orwick, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. Anything you want to add before I let you go?
No, I think overall, long gone are the days of Operation Choke Point 2.0. So I'm excited to see this ushering in of a golden age of cryptocurrency for America. And I think there is a bright future for both the stablecoin industry and for cryptocurrency as a whole ahead. Thank you for having me on, Josh.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here. Have a good rest of your weekend.
You too.